It's a big day for our neighbors in Lesotho. The country today is celebrating Independence Day and wrapping up their bicentennial celebrations. Now, on the 4th of October, back in 1966, Lesotho became a sovereign state, marking the end of British colonial rule and the beginning of self-governance. Lesotho was formed as Basotholand about 200 years ago in 1824, led by King Moshweshwe I. It became a British colony in 1884, I beg your pardon, and upon independence, it was renamed the Kingdom of Lesotho under King Moshweshwe II and its first Prime Minister, Chief Liabua Jonathan. So these are some of the live visuals that we're showing you of the main celebrations as they continue to unfold in Lesotho. In fact, part of those celebrations are happening at a packed stadium. But to make better sense of all these developments for you, let's bring in our SABC News International Editor, Sophie Mokoena, who's with us here in studio. Great to see you as always, Sophie. Thanks for popping by. It's always a great milestone to mark these kind of moments, especially in a context where I imagine so many countries on the continent want to tell the rest of the world that they're independent and aren't relying on either their colonizers or any other Western state, quite frankly.
Yes, indeed. As you pointed out earlier on, the country is celebrating 58 years of independence, but 200 years since the formation of this nation. This nation was formed by King Moshweshwe I by bringing together different groups to form this nation. That included people who fled Difaqane in other areas, and that would include other groups who are not necessarily today known as Basotho. There were people who fled Difaqane under King Shaka, others left in the now Gauteng or up to Mpumalanga, Eastern Transvaal and Western Transvaal and Northern Transvaal, you know, because of those conflicts. Some came from now Eastern Cape, because they were trying to find a fortress or a place for safety. And he brought them together under a mountain in Lesotho, Tababusiu, and it was called a fortress. And since then, this has become a nation on its own and landlocked within South Africa,
right,
but an independent country that really played a prominent role in giving refuge to those later who were fleeing the repressive regime, the apartheid regime. Among them, the former Premier of Limpopo, Ngoako Ramahlodi, advocate, the former Deputy President of this country, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, including the former President Jacob Zuma, our first Reserve Bank Governor, Black, that is Tito Mboweni, and many, many, many others. If you were to ask people who went to Lesotho, you will see that it was quite a number of them. And this is the country, Lesotho, but not without challenges. As you know that constantly there has been coups in that country because also the pressure from the then apartheid regime that was aggrieved, that it's given refuge to what they termed terrorists when we know that they were fighting for freedom. And therefore, it is a small country, mountainous, good scenery. And today, again, it has come to South Africa's rescue by giving or pumping water, even though South Africa is paying for that water, to a province like Gauteng. And now, as the Highlands Development Scheme, that tunnel is being refurbished, and also maintenance is taking place for 6 months, we might be having challenges with water. And it is no surprise that President Ramaphosa saw it fit to be amongst Basotho, and he is going to speak because you'd recall he was appointed by SADC to look at the reforms in that country so that you can have a stable Lesotho.
Absolutely. It's, I suppose, You will tell half the story if we speak about the history of Lesotho without speaking about its ties to South Africa, not only because of its geographical standing in the country, but because of the many things you mentioned around ways in which Lesotho aided the country's own transition to democracy. I imagine, though, as you've also pointed out, today, yes, will be about celebration, but will also be a moment of reflection around how far the country has gone and perhaps the many, I suppose, journeys that still need to be tread in the future.
You are correct. Much as it's an old country, but the reality is it is facing lots of challenges, poverty, unemployment. We saw the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, visiting Lesotho a few days ago because he has a foundation that they established with Prince Seiso, Bereng Seiso, the younger brother of King Letsie III, called Sintibali, Forget Me Not. And it was a dedication to Me Mamohato, the Queen Mother, the late Queen Mother of Lesotho, and Princess Diana, the mother of Harry. And it looks after children who are orphans, and mainly because of HIV and AIDS. And therefore, it's quite an important moment for them to look at all those challenges that they have experienced and try to address them. But also, you know that these are the first people to come to South Africa now underground to dig gold and joined later by Mozambicans and Malawians. And that is why when you look at the mining sector, you still find a lot of Basotho there because they were the first nation to go underground to dig gold. And this is what Gauteng is all about today because of the sweat and the hard work of a nation like Basotho.
Yeah. Depending which debates you kind of get involved in, you'll know there are people who take exception to the lines of demarcation and where they've been drawn over the past couple of years. The exact details escape me, Sophie, but I remember a time where a particular MP in the Lesotho Parliament had called for, you know, those lines to be revisited, almost to suggest that, you know, part of Lesotho's own land has been taken up by South Africa.
Yes, you know that a certain part of South Africa was Lesotho then. You know, Basotho left those areas, Free State in particular. And therefore, you still have that issue where sometimes you'll find that politicians, typical politicians, would argue that Basotho, that demarcation or that decision to have Lesotho in you know, losing its portion must be addressed. But we know that in terms of the United Nations protocol and agreements, some of the demarcations that or the boundaries that were drawn, there was an agreement that there shouldn't be a change or to put, you know, to give it back to particular countries. And Free State is part of the land that belonged to Basotho. And that is why majority of people in Free State speak Sotho. But you do have other languages like isiXhosa, isiZulu in the eastern part. And also you have Africans, the Afrikaners were there who fought with Basotho many times. And therefore, this is what our history is all about. And that is why some people are arguing that the issue of boundaries and saying I'm a South African, I'm a Zimbabwean, I'm a Botswana, becomes very thorny. Because even in 1912, when the ANC was formed, you had traditional leaders or kings or monarchies from the southern region in general being part of that. There was even a structure of monarchy as part of the structure of the then African Native Congress or ANC. Today you have Women's League, Youth League, Veterans League, but they had the second structure was the structure of monarchies. That's why Moshoeshoe even sent some cows for slaughter when the ANC was launched in Bloemfontein.
Sure. What a rich and fascinating history. And I suppose days like this, in some ways, force us to pause and reflect on that history with the attempt, of course, to make sure that the mistakes of the past aren't repeated. Sophie Mokoena, always such a pleasure. Thank you for popping by and helping us make sense of this major milestone for the people of Lesotho as they mark 58 years of independence.